Hello YouTube, I didn't expect to go back to back with a quote-unquote art drama video, but this is something that's been really bothering me, and I figured I'd had the time to address it, so I might as well do so. I think even calling this topic drama kinda negates the whole importance of everything that's been going on lately, because it's not like someone's quote-unquote tracing or using AI art. This is something that will impact the whole internet, and I feel like the art community itself isn't talking about this enough. And by that, I mean the topic of censorship. Now, in my last video and in previous videos, I said that censorship is bad. In most cases, people are using it to push a certain agenda. Those who are in favor of said censorship tend to say that they're doing it in order to protect a specific group, but it usually ends up having the opposite effect. It oftentimes tends to divide people into marginalized groups, and marginalized groups are even further discriminated against. And historically speaking, censorship is often used to hide or obfuscate topics that society doesn't really want to talk about. It's another layer in the whole anti-intellectual sphere that we're going through lately. At least that's the case in the US. I of course can't speak for other countries. But a lot of the recent talk about censorship has mainly dealt with video games and video game devs, but also the Online Safety Act, which the UK Parliament passed not too long ago. And to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure the US is also trying to pass a similar act in Congress. I'll likely have that on screen if I can find the name for it. In addition to what these governments are passing for their quote-unquote online safety, a lot of the larger websites have started implementing their own age verification systems. Now, I don't disagree with the fact that social media is definitely very detrimental for young people. It definitely was for me when I was growing up. And there's plenty of other YouTubers that already went into the whole ethics about having to require users to provide their IDs to use certain sites. I do think it's a bridge too far to have to require an ID to use Spotify or Wikipedia. I never would have passed high school if I didn't have both of those resources. But I'm Aisa and I make videos, more specifically art videos. And I'm certainly not a lawyer. As I said, there's definitely better people who can explain the whole legality behind everything that's going on lately. But I am an artist, and like I said, I think it's important for artists to talk about this topic because censorship is coming for us as well. And I feel like the art community is not talking about this seriously enough. Censorship doesn't just have to come from the government or these platforms. It can also come from the community itself in a lot of different ways. I had already talked about this weird sense of purity culture seeping into fandom spaces not too long ago. Basically dealing with how fandoms deal with sexualizing adult characters, to how representation is even explained in these said fandoms. It's a very messy topic, and I guess this video is sort of a follow-up to that. I will say I do think sometimes the art community can be sometimes oversensitive about these topics. They try to come across as being super progressive, but it actually has the opposite effect. I think sometimes the art community is drawn towards drawing pretty things and not necessarily talking about more difficult topics. If we limit ourselves about what we can and can't draw, then it obviously means that there's less creativity. Art is political, especially in an environment where we consume most of our art on social media and the internet these days. Another debate that I've seen in the art community is whether we consider our art to be content. And again, I think it's another, debate that's kind of meaningless when you think about it. If you post your art on social media, then yes, it technically is content. If you're making art as a content creator, you're still an artist. I don't think seeing your art as content is inherently bad, but there is ways that social media can ruin the process of making art. But I already talked about that, and that's not really the topic of this video. Game devs in their own sense are artists as they create their own worlds in a 3D or 2D space. While the art industry is definitely suffering quite a bit these days, the game industry is a place where artists are able to express themselves. At least that was the intention until recently. With the whole Collective Shout incident, for those who don't know, Collective Shout is quote-unquote a grassroots movement challenging the objectification of women and girls in media. Now, on the face value, that doesn't seem like such a horrible thing. The issue is that they're masquerading as a feminist group when in reality it ties back to conservative think tanks and Christian organizations. The group claims it is trying to remove video games that have themes of SA and other horrific acts, which you would think is a quote-unquote net positive, until you realize it's trying to ban all games with LGBTQ plus characters and content, as well as erase trans people from games while protecting girls and women. This group has nothing to do with feminism and is everything to do with discrimination, anti-abortion, homophobic and transphobic groups. So it's quote-unquote protect all women and girls unless they're gay, trans, or any other marginalized group. What Collective Shout did was pressure payment processors such as Visa and MasterCard to block payments on purchases of games on Steam, and itch.io, which is a huge platform for independent game devs. Now, I don't think most people would have an issue with banning games that are obviously trying to glorify these horrible events, but what Collective Shout is doing is getting games like Mouthwashing, the kid game that was popular last year, into hot water because it deals with SA. Now, Mouthwashing is not exactly a pornographic game. It does deal with heavier topics, of course, like I mentioned, but I don't think it's meant to glorify said actions. If anything, these characters have more depth because of the things that they went through in the main game. Now, I kind of raised this a question that I've sort of touched on in my last video of my unpopular art opinion. We should be able to talk about darker themes in these shows and movies and other media that we interact with. Because whether we like it or not, fiction is an extension of our reality. These ideas and concepts didn't come out of nowhere. That is the case for a lot of artists and their artwork. Their art doesn't have to be photorealism in order to convey real ideas and feelings and motivations. And just because some of these topics might be a bit heavy to deal with doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about them, especially to a younger audience. A lived experience is something that AI can't replicate. And living in a world that's increasingly digital and isolated, having a character that has gone through a similar struggle as you can mean all the difference for a lot of people. And being in a fandom of people who've also gone through similar issues is something that's also helpful. And for a lot of people, the fandom space is a place of community. Unlike going out to an actual venue, you don't have to spend any money to enjoy someone else's art or fan fiction. But now, with purity culture taking a hold in fandom spaces, it feels like fans can't really enjoy themselves without risk of being harassed for no apparent reason. And on the other hand, you have to deal with far-right bigots trying to censor what people can and can't interact with. If fandom culture is starting to suffer from the effects of the rise in conservatism, and these governments are also responding in the rise of conservatism, the art space is really in a heap of trouble, and I really wish that artists would speak out about this more. The only way we're ever going to get out of this rut is if people aren't afraid to self-express. Being yourself and continuing to create is one of the ways we beat this type of thinking. And when I started to view my own artwork and content this way, I think I became a lot more, unburned. For a lot of my life, I was pretty closed off about my feelings and emotions when it came to doing artwork. And in that time, since I started my YouTube channel and I started streaming on Twitch and YouTube, I'm starting to find my own voice when it comes to my art. And I still have a long way to go, but I don't really feel ashamed for expressing myself. I'll talk about things even if they think that they're cringe, because I don't care, this is my platform. I'm not gonna let someone else's thoughts dictate what I talk about. And that's sort of the issue that I have with censorship in general. You aren't going to tell someone what they can and can't talk about or what experiences did or didn't happen, whether it is non-fiction works or fictional universes. That's something, again, that AI can't replicate, and it definitely shouldn't be something that other people try to hide because it's difficult. And I guess another reason why I want to talk about art history on this channel, and I will definitely do more videos like that in the future, is how history is being taught in the United States is also something that's definitely under attack these days. Just the defunding of the educational system, especially humanities, is what led to this tyrannical, anti-intellectual state that we find ourselves in. And this is something that I could talk about for hours, but I try not to rant too much about that in these videos. But as someone who enjoys art, histology, and all sorts of different fields, it's upsetting to see this type of thinking. There's so much that can be told with different stories and different drawings and other art forms, but we're too closed-minded to appreciate it. Rather than try to understand something that is a bit different from our own perspective, we rather pretend it doesn't exist at all. Instead of opening our minds to experiencing something different, it's easy to just post and react to slop content and cause more divisions between people. Instead of create, it's easy to just criticize constantly. There's no nuance anymore, everything's black or white, you're either with me or against me. And it's this kind of thinking that's what's plaguing the art community, and fandom spaces as a whole. It's this rage bait content that I'm just sick of. Because in a way, it's its own form of censorship by shaming people for things that they can't always control. If artists feel like they have to censor themselves to appeal to a larger fan base because of such a shift, then their true stories might never get told. While it is true that we can't really control what these larger media companies do, both traditional media and social media, our channels, blogs, and pages are a way to express ourselves. And that's something that these corporations can't really take away from us as long as we keep creating. That includes talking about issues that might not always be super popular, but are necessary to talk about to keep the art space healthy. Pretending that these changes aren't happening or that none of that really exists isn't really helping artists. Having these companies and movements and organizations censor people's voices, especially marginalized groups, definitely doesn't help the situation either. A lot of these serious topics get sensationalized so much that people tend to care about what's actually going on. And that is equally harmful for both artists and people who just enjoy the internet. People focus their ire on the wrong target instead of these corporations that are trying to divide people. They make money off of the censorship, the division that this type of content is causing for people. They don't care who they have to hurt as long as their shareholders get record-breaking profits every year. If you want to see me rant about these transgressions both here on videos and on live streams, then don't hesitate to like this video as well as subscribe. I'm getting an upgrade to my setup, so hopefully I will be able to consistently stream more and have more uploads. September and October will have a lot more in ways of streams and content, so be on the lookout for that. And who knows, I might be hosting more events and stuff on my channel, so stay tuned for that as well. I know I haven't been the most consistent for sure, but I am thankful for all the support that I've received, and I hope to keep going in my YouTube channel, as well as the other platforms that I regularly post on. Back to the topic at hand, I think the main point that I wanted to make in this particular video is that artists do have the platform to speak out more on issues such as censorship and other related issues. Because if we don't talk about these issues, they will eventually come for all of us. It won't just be for the trans community, it'll be for other groups in the LGBTQ and other marginalized groups in general, women, people of color, disabled people, people with different beliefs. People shouldn't feel like they're virtue signaling to talk about the issues that they care about, and artists are obviously quite opinionated people. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about these darker topics just because they might not necessarily be popular. It's about supporting your beginner artists, whether they're trans or any other marginalized group. It's about doing the hard work to build a community that's positive and uplifts people instead of causes more division. That includes having the uncomfortable conversations and dealing with topics that may not necessarily be pleasant. But you do those things because it's important. Whether you represent that with your artwork or your games or any other form of creative act, creating and being yourself is the greatest resistance towards all the fascist beliefs taking hold these days. It would benefit the younger audience to show a more authentic side of ourselves as artists. I think the YouTube community has done this quite well, especially with the smaller artists that I see popping up on my feed all the time. The ones I've interacted with are nice people and I would like to do more stuff with them. The same can't necessarily be said about the TikTok art community or even the Instagram art community. And let's not get me started with the Twitter art community. I don't even use Twitter anymore and it was the best decision I ever made. At least regarding art content creation. For a lot of people, the online art space is the third space for talking about our favorite shows and fandoms and such. Not everyone has the luxury of living in a bigger city that has a vibrant art community. Or really just any accepting community, which is what a lot of younger people are lacking these days. I don't think shielding them from difficult topics is what's going to help them grow and adjust to this crazy world that we're in. And hiding people that are quote-unquote different also doesn't change the fact that people can't afford their rent or groceries. Or the fact that our planet is literally heating up right before us. Art shouldn't just be an escapist fantasy land. It should be a place where we can talk about these topics in regards to the characters that we like. Art is a form of political commentary, and if we lose that along the way, then we lose our sense of self. And it's sort of hard to come back from that when all these platforms are making such drastic changes lately. Now, I don't want to be a doomer and say that all is nigh and that there's no point. I'm actually saying the opposite here. Now is the time to speak up, especially for our neighbors or those who need more support from the system. I guess another little tangent here before I wrap up this video is the fact that people are using AI art for protests. You can't on one hand say that you're against billionaires and all the horrible actions that they're taking, then on the other use AI art to prove that point. It kind of goes both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want to support your community, you should support local artists. Artists and graphic designers are the backbone of a lot of political movements and protests. Nothing sends a message more than strong visuals. Being able to articulate your message visually is something that a lot of movements have in common. And it's for that reason why it's very important to support your artists in these types of situations. We shouldn't let silence be the same as complicity when it comes to these difficult topics. And I know I'll probably get some comments saying that, hey, this is not that deep when it comes to video games. But the issue is not just video games, it's all forms of media, whether it's movies, books, shows, TV, other forms of media, even art like I mentioned. Historically speaking, defunding humanities and other forms of education never really led to anywhere good. And for artists that love to post on these platforms, we really do need to talk about this more because this is going to become more prevalent. None of this petty art drama will matter if we can't post our art because it's too LGBTQ or too DEI or whatever buzz term there is these days. This is a very important topic and it needs to be talked about more in the art space, especially on YouTube as well as TikTok and other short form media places. Because it's a frog in the pot situation, we won't notice that we're cooked until it's too late. Yeah, sorry for yet another sort of serious video, but this was something that's on my mind. I'm glad to have the space to talk about it, even if I don't have a huge audience. My next video should be a lot more light topic, as it will be covering my sketchbook tour from 2024. So yeah, if you want to see that, then don't hesitate to like this video, as well as subscribe. But I will talk about these topics time to time because it is important to remind the community of why all of this even matters. I am interested to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole topic of censorship, especially its impact on the art community. Apart from places like Blue Sky or Tumblr, I don't really see it talked about in any other mainstream social media platform. So leave your comments down below. And until next time, goodbye and take care. Peace.